It's circa summer 2010. Fallout 3 has been out for 2 years, New Vegas has just been released, and a friend of mine suggests I give them a try. I've never heard of the Fallout franchise before, but I was familiar with its developer Bethesda Game Studios. I can be a creature of habit when it comes to playing video games, especially ones of the role-playing genre. Once I've gotten my teeth into a game, I tend to leave no stone unturned, racking up hundreds of hours of game time in the process. Because of my borderline obsessive gaming habits, many great titles over the years had a tendency to pass me by. Games such as Mass Effect and the Witcher series still loiter amongst my pile of shame. When 2010 rolled around, I was still very much engrossed with Bethesda's other juggernaut, The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. I was 2 years late to the Fallout 3 party, but I was able to pry myself away from Tamriel long enough in order to give it a fair crack of the whip, and it quickly became my new favourite game, usurping Oblivion in the process. Like most folk, Fallout 3 was my first taste of the Wasteland, swiftly followed by fan favourite New Vegas, and in more recent years, Fallout 4 and 76. However, there was always one question in the back of my mind: what happened to games 1 and 2? You see, before Bethesda, there was Interplay Entertainment and Black Isle Studios, the publisher and developers of the now classic Fallout titles. And it turns out that those games have been available to play on various platforms such as Steam and GOG for quite some time. Fans of the franchise still hold these isometric classics in high regard. In fact, some of the older generation of gamer outright prefer them over Bethesda's first-person open-world formula, and so naturally I wanted to see what all the fuss was about. During the course of this retrospective review, I will be talking about my personal experiences with the original 1997 release, sharing my thoughts as I go, so please be aware there will be spoilers throughout the video. If you've yet to experience classic Fallout firsthand, then consider this your one and only spoiler warning. So with all that out the way, let's begin. Upon booting up Fallout for the first time, I was greeted by not one but two familiar sounds. The first being Maybe by the Ink Spots, a song I've heard 1,000 times before whilst exploring the DC Wasteland, only this time the backdrop was the ruins of Los Angeles. As the music faded away and the screen to black, the eerie silence was followed by the now iconic tagline, War never changes, delivered by the legendary Fallout narrator Ron Perlman. I'm 5 minutes in and already this game has me hooked. After selecting a new game from the main menu, I was presented with 3 character presets. First up there was Max, a high strength bruiser, followed by Natalia, an agile sneak specialist, and finally Albert, a silver-tongued diplomat. Each character offered a range of strengths and weaknesses, but are less than optimal. I don't really like the look of any of them and decide to create my own Vault Dweller. The character creation opens up and straight away it's apparent to see that classic Fallout is built on the foundations of an old school pen and paper RPG. The character sheet is neat and tidy. It doesn't overwhelm with information, but at the same time provides enough insight as to what each attribute, skill and optional trait has to offer. It all felt very familiar, with strength offering extra carry weight limits, proficiency in weapon handling, and the ability to just hit things harder with your fists. A higher perception improves chance to hit from distance, endurance gives extra hit points, you can influence others with a higher charisma, a higher intelligence rewards with extra skill points to spend when leveling up, increasing agility allows for a greater pool of action points, and finally luck, which affects things from random and special encounters to successful critical hits in combat. All these attributes start with a base score of 5 and can be increased to a heroic 10 or decreased to a very bad 1 or 2, depending on what trait you take, and of course there are 5 additional points to spend however you see fit, just like in Fallout 3 and New Vegas. I really wanted to try an unarmed or melee build, but I was told by friends prior to jumping in that the difficulty curve can be especially brutal for a first time player. With that in mind, I decide to err on the side of caution and roll a character with a high perception, intelligence and agility, with small guns repair and science as my 3 tag skills. I like to add a little bit of roleplay to these types of games, and I figured that if I'd grown up in a vault, I'd at least have a baseline knowledge of engineering as well as basic weapons training. There was also the option to choose a maximum of 2 traits. This was a feature that had been omitted from Fallout 3 but had been reinstated for New Vegas. Some of these are familiar to me, such as Bloody Mess and Furnace, for example. They still feature in the modern games only as perks, but the one that really stood out was Gifted, which gives a +1 bonus to all special attributes, the trade-off being that all skills suffer a 10-point reduction and you receive 5 less skill points per level. Still, I felt the reward outweighed the risk, so I select Gifted and start my journey. A short cutscene plays involving the Vault Overseer, and we get a bit of plot exposition as he explains the Vault water chip has given up the ghost. He then proceeds to give me the quest to find a new one, revealing I have 150 days to complete the mission before the water supply runs dry. The only lead I have sends me travelling across the Wasteland to neighbouring Vault 15. The game now starts for real, and I find myself outside the vault in a dark cave full of mutated rats, and there's a pile of bones draped in a tattered Vault's jumpsuit just a few metres away. The bones belong to our unfortunate predecessor, a guy named Ed, indicating we are not the first to have been tasked with finding a water chip. One of the first things that strikes me is the glaring absence of anything that resembles a tutorial, and this is perhaps the reason why Ed is sadly dead. Fortunately for us, however, the original instruction manual is included within the game's files, and it's here you'll find a more detailed explanation on how to move around, equip weapons and armour, use inventory items, and how to select a skill for use via the skill decks. The game mechanics are relatively straightforward to figure out, so in fairness, reading through pages of the manual isn't all that necessary, but I did find some helpful tips. Without having a flick through first, I probably would have never figured out that you can use keyboard shortcuts for skill use via the skill decks by using the corresponding number on the number pad. 1 for sneak, 2 for lockpick, 3 for steal, etc. And after playing around for a few minutes, I was able to familiarise myself with the UI, the Pip-Boy interface, game menus and inventory screen. As I move towards the first group of rats, they attack, giving me my first taste of battle. Combat in classic Fallout is turn-based, a mechanic in RPGs that I personally prefer over real-time or real-time with pause. You can choose to either take a standard attack or take an aimed shot, which is essentially an early version of the VATS mechanic. The use of VATS costs 1 action point more than a standard attack due to the potential to score some devastating critical hits. Chance to hit is dictated by a hidden dice roll, and each action such as movement, combat or inventory access uses action points. Once those points are spent, your turn ends. Each NPC or creature that has been alerted will then take their turns using their action points until eventually it rolls back around and the next round of fighting begins. This is where I realised the importance of having a high perception. The greater the number, the higher your initiative in the sequence chain during combat. Meaning more often than not, I can take 2 turns in a row at the start of a combat round. The rats are easily dispatched, and as I exit the cave, I'm greeted with my first look at the overworld. There aren't any bright lights or no blurred vision as our eyes struggle to adjust to the sunlight like in Fallout 3 or 4. Instead, a simple text entry on the Pip-Boy information panel explains this is the first time our Vault Dweller has seen the natural light, which feels a little bit anticlimactic. In the more modern franchise entries, stepping outside for the first time always felt like a big deal, and is always a memorable moment. For me, Fallout 4 still does it best. I had to remind myself that the game was released way back in 1997, but I still couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The minutes, hours and days slowly tick by as I traverse the Wasteland, and whilst en route to Vault 15 I stumble across an unknown settlement, so naturally I went to explore. It turns out the unknown settlement is none other than Shady Sands, the precursor to the new Californian Republic. The town is still in its infancy and only has a handful of residents that farm the land. It's still a far cry from the superpower that will ultimately push east towards the Mojave. Having hundreds of hours invested into New Vegas is certainly helping with getting me immersed into the game, and it's not long before I find myself helping out the locals with their rad scorpion problem, which yields a hefty amount of experience and is enough to tip me into the next level. It's also inside the Rad Scorpion Cave where the game teaches me the first in a series of very important lessons. On this occasion, adjusting tactics when in combat. The scorpions hit a lot harder than the rats encountered outside of the vault, and I rinse through my limited supply of stimpaks in no time. I get dangerously close to 0 health, and I have no choice but to start using action points defensively in order to move out of melee range. This prevents the scorpions from registering a hit. It took a little longer to deal with all the critters, but it proved to be a much safer way of dealing with the nest. After spending a bit more time in Shady Sands, I introduced myself to a number of key NPCs. Firstly, Aradesh, the town leader, who was grateful to see the Rad Scorpions dealt with. Then there was Raslo, the town healer, who in exchange for a scorpion stinger heals me back up to 100% health. And finally, Katrina, the town greeter. She points me in the direction of Ian, a caravan guard and potential companion. She also provides some great bits of information with regards to some of the other mechanics in the game, such as the use of the first aid and doctor's skill. It's also revealed here that pretty much every interactable NPC can be bartered with. After cycling through a few more dialogue options, she tells me that she was originally from Vault 15 and that she had to leave due to a raider attack that followed shortly after an internal conflict within the populace. After exhausting all conversation topics, I get awarded with 250 experience points and move on to recruit Ian before leaving town. This was of course after looting anything deemed useful that wasn't nailed down, including not one but 2 survival skill books that gave a nice little boost to my outdoorsman skill. In my headcanon, the locals are only too happy to donate these books. After all, I did help them out earlier. Upon arriving at Vault 15, it becomes clear it's been long since abandoned, just as Katrina had alluded to. After clearing out the entrance of even more rats, the game promptly serves up lesson number 2. You need to pay attention. The vault elevator was broken. This was information freely passed on by Katrina at Shady Sands. The shaft can only be traversed with a rope, so I had no choice but to waste precious time in returning to find one. Lucky for me, I knew exactly where to look. I had passed the opportunity to pick up a rope twice whilst loaning stuff previously, thinking it was just a generic junk item. Another important lesson was learned here. Just because an item may seem like junk, it doesn't necessarily mean it is. One silver lining from all this back and forth, however, was upon returning and speaking again with the gate guard, it had materialised that the nearby raiders had kidnapped Aradesh's daughter, Tandy, whom I had briefly spoken to during my first visit. I was asked once more to help, and I was only too happy to oblige, sensing experience and another level on the horizon. With a rope in my backpack, I head towards the raider camp and give a little wry smile as I'm introduced to a familiar foe, the Khans. Speaking with the Khan leader offers different solutions to the conundrum I am facing. I can simply fight and wipe the Khans out. Option 2 involves an unarmed 1v1 fight with the boss man himself. Option 3 is a speech check, and option 4 allows me to barter for Tandy's release. I opt for the latter, thinking it's best to leave this fight for another day and return once I have better gear. I was greatly outnumbered, and although I want to free the 2 slaves from the raiders' cruelty, I don't want to risk losing Ian to a stray bullet so early on in the campaign. After returning Tandy home, I'm greeted as a hero and rewarded with 500 caps plus a nice big return of experience that tips me into the all-important level 3. Leveling is pretty much the same as the more modern franchise entries. You get a certain amount of skill points based off your intelligence attribute, and these can be distributed between the various skills that shape your character, such as speech, barter, or lockpick, to name but a few. Tag skills can be increased by 2 points for every point spent, and the greater the skill value, the more successful you'll be when trying to use the aforementioned skill. As I found out, skills can also be raised above 100 for increased efficacy. Alongside skill points are of course perks. These are awarded for every 3 levels attained or every 4th level if the skilled trait is tagged. It's here where your character build can really start to take form and grow. There are dedicated perks available to complement your playstyle, whether you choose to specialise in guns, melee or sneak, or even opt for a pacifist run. All tastes are catered for. Naturally, the higher your level, the better the perks become. There is a level cap of 21, meaning potentially you can choose up to 7 unique perks, although by the time I had reached the endgame, I was actually nowhere near to hitting max level. My advice is to take the perk you want when it becomes available, rather than waiting for the next perk level, as you might not get the chance to select it before squaring off with the game's final boss. Just for a little bit of context, when the credits rolled on my playthrough, I was only at level 16, and I had felt as if I'd done most of what the game had to offer. The full list of perks can be found inside the game's instruction manual, so I was able to forward plan my build. Each perk comes with a short description, and the special requirements are listed beneath each one, so it may well be worth your time to have a read through before you play, as this could help you decide where to invest those all-important attribute points. At level 3 I chose Awareness, enabling me to see what weapon type an enemy combatant wields, as well as ammo count and total hit points. After rescuing Tandy, I return to Vault 15 and I have my first random encounter with a travelling merchant en route. We exchange a few words and I move on. This time I successfully use the rope and descend down the elevator shaft to the lower levels, and it's of no surprise to discover no water chip present, but it's by no means a wasted journey. I managed to find my first piece of armour in the form of a cool looking leather jacket, a nice SMG and a couple of frag grenades to boot. The way armour works in classic Fallout is very similar to how it functions in New Vegas. Each piece offers various protection against different damage types such as laser, fire and explosives. The better the piece, the greater the protection, with added damage threshold bonuses thrown in for good measure. Different types of armours also modify armour class, which, as I understand it, simply increase the chance to evade an incoming attack. It does this by subtracting the armour class from your opponent's chance to hit. Admittedly, I may be misinterpreting that, but in all cases, the higher the number, the better. So now I was at a temporary impasse. The only lead I had for a water chip was Vault 15. There was no other hints available, so I returned home in the hope that the Overseer might offer some additional help. This, annoyingly, drew another blank. At this point I realised the game isn't going to hold my hand as I play, and to be fair, this added a welcomed layer of difficulty rarely found in modern games. I managed to resupply my 10mm ammo and gain a shotgun for some additional firepower from the Vault 13 armoury, and with the new locations of Junktown and the hub loaded into the Pip-Boy, I head south in the hope of finding a new lead. Junktown is first up. It's a much larger settlement than Shady Sands that gets its name from the perimeter fences made up of pre-war cars and, yeah, you've guessed it, junk. After poking around for a bit, I introduced myself to another voiced NPC, Killian Darkwater. He is the mayor, store owner and local sheriff, all rolled into one. After the initial conversation, an assassin brandishing a rifle bursts into Killian's shop and starts shooting. I assist the local lawman, and this interaction acts as a trigger point for a much larger subplot that will ultimately decide the fate of Junktown, depending on my actions. It soon becomes clear there is a power struggle between Killian and the local casino owner, aptly named Gizmo, presumably because he looks like a gremlin that's eaten after midnight. Both parties want rid of each other so they can gain full control over the town. Killian simply wants Gizmo gone so he can clean up the streets, whereas Gizmo wants Darkwater out of the picture in order to grow his gambling and racketeering activities. It's pretty obvious that Gizmo is behind the assassination attempt that we triggered earlier, but Killian can't take action without conclusive proof. Alternatively, there's nothing stopping you just blowing Killian's head off there and turning over his dog tags over at the casino for the bounty. The decision to help either of them is yours to make, but choices have consequences. This type of decision making has become an integral part of Fallout's makeup and provides a solid foundation for any RPG worth its salt. Wanting to do the right thing, I helped Killian by getting a recorded confession. The second part of the quest to clear up the streets has me helping out the guards by infiltrating and taking down Gizmo's hired muscle, a gang known as the Skulls. Before continuing, I pick up not one but two further companions. A ranger named Tycho and a familiar friend in the form of Dogmeat are added to the group. With myself as pack leader and Ian as number 2, I was starting to build a formidable team. We all wander over to the local watering hole and another fixed event plays out, which involves Neil the bartender blowing a member of the gang to pieces after he attacks the waitress unprovoked. Naturally, the rest of the Skulls are less than happy and plan to attack the bar the following night in retaliation. I offer to help, but need to prove myself first by stealing an urn from the bar countertop containing the ashes of Neil's recently deceased wife. After doing this, I can inform the guards of the gang's intentions and help them take down the Skulls in the bar shootout that follows. The quest awards some decent experience and plenty of loot, including a new piece of leather armour, so I was feeling good about my progress. The gameplay loop up to this point had felt balanced and rewarding. It was after completing the quest, however, I started to see a few minor issues with the writing and character interactions. For example, after removing Gizmo from the equation, there was no reaction from the gang who were on his payroll. There was no acknowledgement of his demise and no threat of backlash against the town. They were more than happy to recruit me into their ranks despite the fact I've just removed their benefactor. They've zero idea about who I am and what I've just done. This continued as I spoke to other NPCs around town. Not one of them passed comment on Gizmo's untimely end. Junktown continued to operate as if he was still alive and running the now empty casino. Now this admittedly could have been down to certain development limitations, but I found myself thinking back to my first random encounter with the travelling merchant outside of Shady Sands. This was a completely non-scripted event, and yet the merchant knew of my exploits in town. He was aware that I was the one responsible for the safe return of Tandy, and even praised me for doing the right thing. Somebody within the writing team cared enough and felt the need to include this, even though many players might not trigger that encounter. The absence of a reaction from the local citizens after removing Gizmo and the Skulls from power suggests that this was an oversight in the writer's room. After taking down the gang, my business in Junktown was concluded. Unable to find any additional information as to the whereabouts of a water chip, I move on to the next big settlement on my map. A singer in the saloon gave me directions to Aditum, aka Los Angeles, and most interestingly of all, the Brotherhood of Steel. I resist the law of power armor for now and I set off for a place known as the Hub, and it's here where the game really starts to open out a bit. The Hub is exactly what you'd expect it to be, a bustling town and hive of activity split into 5 zones. Numerous caravans are readying up for their monthly drives across the Wasteland. Local law enforcement patrol the streets, and the central zone is full of vendors and job opportunities. The place feels alive, and if I'm to find any leads to the location of a water chip, I'm certain it's here. The Hub is easily the biggest settlement around, and I found myself coming and going frequently throughout my playthrough. So I start to ask around for any potential leads, and I'm directed towards the southern zone to speak with the water merchants. This proved to be a good move as I was able to purchase water and send it north towards the vault. I'm sitting on a fat stack of cash at this point and I'm happy to pay the caps. This bought me 100 extra days to complete my task, removing some of the risk of failure in the process. It's suggested that by revealing the location of the vault could have potential consequences in the future, but as far as I'm aware, this never materialised. As I continue to converse with the master merchant, I get the biggest lead yet as to the whereabouts of a water chip, with one potentially found amongst the ruins of a ghoul community named Necropolis. The water caravans don't travel out that way, suggesting the ghouls have their own clean water source. I'm no longer in a rush to complete my mission thanks to the additional water en route north, so I explore the hub some more, picking up some side quests and experience in the process. A job advert on a bulletin board points me in the direction of the Fargo traders, and after asking around it seems that they've been having some problems with missing caravans. Butch, the head honcho, an obnoxious arsehole, seems to think that the caravans are being attacked by a death claw, a monster I'm all too familiar with. At this point I'm still only level 5, so I'm not relishing the chance to fight a 10-foot irradiated lizard that can easily rip through my squad like a knife through hot butter, but I take the job all the same. I'm sent towards the local gun store and I speak to Beth, who fills me in with a bit more information regarding the caravans. It turns out that all caravans are being targeted, but the Fargo traders have been getting it worse than the rest. Potential suspects include the Water Merchants, Brotherhood of Steel, and of course the Deathclaw, although the latter is believed to be just a rumour and hearsay. It seems at this point in the Fallout timeline, Deathclaws are regarded as myth, no doubt because anybody who has encountered one has never lived to tell their story, save for one, a mutant in Old Town by the name of Harold. I must admit I didn't twig at first, but yes, the mutant in question is indeed the very same Harold from Fallout 3, although at this stage of his life he is still a ghoul and hasn't yet become a tree. I think I'm right in saying that he is the only character from the original games that feature in any of the Bethesda developed titles. It's nice to learn about his past as he explains how he grew up in a vault and opens up about the events leading to his mutation. He name drops a guy called Richard Gray, who, unbeknown to me at this point, is actually the main antagonist of the game, and then proceeds to tell us about his Deathclaw encounter. Outside of Harold's shack is another NPC that is, let's just say, not the sharpest tool in the shed, but he offers to take me to the Deathclaw lair, and against my better judgment, I agree. Now the fight itself isn't as tough as I first imagined, and although the Deathclaw seems to have a bottomless pit of action points, my band of merry men, and of course Dogmeat, are able to put the monster down after just a few rounds of combat, netting an impressive 1000 experience in doing so. Going further into the cave has us come across a dying super mutant, another first encounter for the Vault Dweller. The mutant hands over a blooded holodisc and passes away. The disc mentions a super mutant lieutenant foreshadowing a future boss fight, and this is enough to tip me into level 6. The disc reveals that the super mutants are in fact responsible for the missing caravans, and I've been attacking them to capture prime human subjects for mutation. Well, I guess old habits die hard. Reporting my success to Butch has me pocket 800 caps, and I head over to the Crimson Caravan for more work. They head out on the 3rd and 17th of each month, and Necropolis is listed as a destination. Luckily, it's the 16th of January, so I wait until the next day and head out. I was pre-warned that the Crimson Caravan pay the most caps to their guards because they take the most dangerous routes, and whilst travelling to our destination we are set upon by a gang of raider ghouls. It's not a difficult fight and they are swept aside without issue. We arrive in one piece and get given a further 600 caps for the trouble. We are given the option to jump back on for the return journey for additional caps, but the City of the Dead awaits and I want to find the elusive water chip. Up until now, I've been having a relatively easy time with the game, which has surprised me somewhat. The thought of upping the difficulty a notch had passed through my mind, especially considering how straightforward it was to defeat the Deathclaw. That all being said, the game difficulty ups the stakes in Necropolis. There are large packs of ghouls spread around the place, and it's a coin flip as to whether or not they will turn hostile. Shortly after arriving, I'm set upon by one of these groups. I immediately think I've done something wrong to antagonise them. The problem is, I've no idea what I've done, if anything. I consider reloading in case I've inadvertently turned the entire city hostile, which could consequently lock me out of any additional quests. Fortunately, this initial hostility seemed to be an isolated incident. The main areas of town are connected by a series of sewers. After finding my way down there, I come across a group of ghoul outcasts who are a lot friendlier than the surface dwellers. The main leader of Necropolis, a talking head named Set, has banished these ghouls underground, but they are left alone and are allowed to live in relative peace because I'm told Set is worried he might not have the numbers to defend Necropolis in the event of an attack. The outcasts give me a quick rundown of the current state of affairs, telling me that there is a vault close by with a fully working water chip. Jackpot! He asks that I leave it in place, however, as this is the only means of clean water the ghouls have access to, as their water pump has broken down. This kicks off a quest to fix said water pump located at the watershed. Of course, however, there is a catch. The outcast leader goes on to say that the spare parts for the pump can be located somewhere in the sewers, warning that they will be likely guarded by the usual critters that inhabit such places. Before I leave, he tells me to return once I have the parts, as he may be able to help me further. It's well worth your time to do this, as when I returned to speak with him, I received 3 skill books that increased my repair skill substantially. My next stop has me calling in to see the big cheese of Necropolis. He's less than friendly but sees an opportunity to use me as part of a plan to regain control of the watershed. Remember the catch that I've just mentioned? Well, super mutants have moved in and Set isn't enthusiastic about the idea of sharing his turf. He asks me to take them out, absolving the ghouls from any involvement in the mutant removal and thus protecting the town against any potential backlash. I reach the watershed and sure enough, numerous named super mutants are present, but only one will speak with me. There are multiple outcomes here, one of which has us fast travel straight to an unknown base to be interrogated by the super mutant lieutenant, who is both highly intelligent and charming in equal measure. Conversing with the lieutenant is actually quite refreshing, and he's more than happy to disclose information regarding the master plan. I've become accustomed with the Bethesda approach in recent years, portraying super mutants as bloodthirsty, mindless brutes. They only exist so the player has something to shoot at. It's interesting to see the original vision for these characters. The mutant army is organised and well drilled. The transmission on the holodisc retrieved from the Deathclaw cave is testament to this. There is clearly a hierarchical structure, with the mysterious master seated on the top seat of the power pyramid. His regal lieutenant perfectly plays his role as the reliable, relentless and ruthless right-hand man. The rest follow orders without question in order to achieve the end goal of unity. A lot of care and attention went into the creation of the super mutants, so it is a little bit of a shame to see what they have now become. Anyway, I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, so after triggering the bad ending in which our hero meets a rather unpleasant end, or beginning depending on how you see it, I've no choice but to reload a save file prior to speaking with Harry. In order to move on by peacefully, I need to pass a speech check and convince him that I'm a ghoul or a highly advanced android. It's an amusing exchange of words, but failure results in immediately being attacked. He's armed with a laser weapon capable of one-shotting me, so I give it a couple of attempts and eventually I get a successful speech roll. Moving on past the super mutants, I head into the vault via a hidden manhole, only to be attacked by the glowing ones inside. They aren't as scary as the ones found in Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 4, and I'm able to help myself to the vault's water chip without breaking too much of a sweat. At this point I remembered that I haven't actually fixed the water pump, so I start to wonder if that's linked to the hostility inside. A quick reload allows me to check. I ensure the water pump is in good working order and head back down. The 2 guards at the main entrance are still less than happy to see me, and a small group on the second level, guarding a container with some Radex, are also hostile. But oddly enough, the second group of glowing ghouls on that level and the ghouls situated near the water chip control console remain passive. I'm not actually sure if fixing the pump first is necessary or whether I just got lucky the second time around. There is a chance that the glowing ones will be hostile towards me and all NPCs regardless, which would explain why Set is keeping some locked away in cells back at his HQ. Anyway, I have got what I came for and I head back to the surface to deal with the mutants, and this is where the difficulty curve started to steepen. It's safe to say I get my arse handed to me a few times, but eventually after a few lucky dice rolls I get top side of the mutants. It's the toughest fight I've encountered so far, and I don't feel great about taking them out, especially considering that technically I'm the aggressor in this situation. I know they're supposed to be the bad guys, but this group has personality, and I can't help but feel a fondness towards Harry. Still, a job is a job. Victory did come at a cost, and I'm reminded why super mutants aren't to be underestimated. Dog meat is now dog meat, meaning 4 sadly became 3. I return to Set to receive a pathetic reward and head back north to Vault 13 via the Raider camp near Shady Sands to settle some unfinished business. Returning home, I immediately fast travel to the command centre and promptly hand over the water chip to the Overseer. He's dismissive when I bring up the idea of opening up the vault doors to allow the residents to come and go as they please, and instead switches focus to install the water chip. After writing a report, he expresses concern regarding the mutant encounters, and I'm once again asked to leave the vault, only this time to seek and destroy the mutant threat. The game's countdown timer has now been removed, meaning I'm no longer against the clock. So I head back to the hub to offload the loot I've been hoarding. My next destination from here is the Brotherhood of Steel. With the super mutants in play, I think the wisest move is to try and get my hands on some power armour. Seeing an opportunity to earn caps, I decide to sign on as a caravan guard, only this time with the water merchants. To my surprise, the master merchant is asking for another 2,000 caps in order to send water up to Vault 13. I'm softlocked from working with the water merchants until I agree to pay, and the game awards me with another 1000 XP, but crucially, the countdown timer has now reactivated and is showing at 292 days until game over. In addition, the quest to find the water chip is no longer scratched out. Having looked online, I've discovered that this can happen in the non-patched version of the game. As an extra kick in the teeth, my last save point was way back in Necropolis, prior to the super mutant fight. I don't want to find out later on down the line that this bug will ultimately break my game and prevent me from finishing, so I have no choice but to reload and redo the fight with the mutants and raiders. I replicated everything as best I could. Dogmeat survived Necropolis but caught a stray bullet sadly whilst fighting the Khans second time round, and everything in Vault 13 unfolded as before. In the hub, I opt to sign on with the Crimson Caravan and head towards the Brotherhood of Steel. My interaction with the Brotherhood is extremely short and to the point. Go here, fetch this, come back, and then we'll talk. I'm told to go to a place known as the Glow, and the initiate on sentry duty tells me that the place is highly radioactive, so I think the wisest choice here is to return with the caravan and bag myself some additional anti-radiation chems. The return to the hub with the caravan is a huge mistake and is a complete disaster. It's a nightmare scenario as we are set upon by a large group of well-armed raiders. All the caravan guards are killed, and to my dismay, Tycho and Ian both take dirt naps, leaving me as the last man standing. I survive, just barely, but the fight does give enough XP for level 9. I pick what I need from my former companions' inventories and I return to the hub to prepare for my next journey. I did consider save scumming in order to keep my companions alive, but honestly at times they were more of a hindrance than a help, and at this point I'm using them as pack mules. I would catch a lazy bullet from Ian on more than one occasion and have my progress blocked because the dumbass decided to stand in a doorway with his thumb up his backside. Not being able to tell him to move was incredibly frustrating, and honestly, it's a miracle he survived as long as he did. There aren't any companion related quests, and as far as I'm aware, they don't level up with the player either, meaning they'd be largely ineffectual during the late game. Trading gear within the barter menu is a pain in the arse too, meaning I had to repeatedly pickpocket my own gear from their inventories. Honestly, I think for now, I'm better off without. Tycho was a much more appealing character with an interesting backstory, and to be fair, he is a much bigger loss, so I was disappointed when he went down, but for now, I must press on as the lone wolf. The Glow, as you might expect, is a highly radioactive ruin out in the middle of nowhere. Underneath the rubble lies a dormant Westtech research facility that was responsible for the creation and early experimentation of FEV. The installation was one of the first targets to be hit by the nukes, and the devastation around the area on the world map is evident to see. The facility has been kept on emergency power ever since by a sentient Zax AI similar to President Eden in Fallout 3. Now, oddly enough, only the first couple of floors have actually been penetrated, so props to the architect for its build quality. Prior to arriving, I was expecting a radioactive hellscape akin to the glowing sea in Fallout 4, albeit toned down due to game engine limitations. I am very much conditioned to the Bethesda formula, so when I arrived and there weren't any abominations to fight, immediately I felt disappointed. The biggest danger to life is by far the high levels of background radiation. Within seconds I was hit by several large doses, which were swiftly nullified after I made sure to take 2 lots of Radex, essentially giving me 100% resistance. With the danger temporarily removed, I'm now free to explore the facility at my leisure. Now learning from past mistakes, I use a rope to climb down, and it's not long before I find what the Brotherhood are after. Although the Glow is lacking in some areas, it excels in creating atmosphere and intrigue. This place has become a tomb to the many who had ventured here. There aren't any NPCs to give out quests or offer useful bits of information. It's just you. You are alone. The Radex could run out at any time, and I'm surrounded by an invisible killer. After a while, I started to appreciate the solitude. This is something that Fallout 4 was severely lacking. Experiencing the original game firsthand has allowed me to better understand why so many fans are critical of the direction the franchise is going under Bethesda's stewardship. But I digress. Descending further, I find numerous keycards that provide access to the floors below. The only area I can't get to is the secure testing labs on level 5 due to the lack of power. The main generator needs repairing, so I head to the 6th floor and get to work. Restoring the main power also wakes up the RoboBrain security. Fighting my way back to the Zax computer with the power back on, I can gain access to the mainframe to completely disable the base defences and learn a little bit more about the projects that Westtech were working on, including the T-51B power armour. With the base now operating at full power, the previously inaccessible 5th level can now be explored, and I discover an absolute treasure trove of kit and equipment, which is no doubt what the Rogue Brotherhood squad came looking for. Big guns, energy weapons, combat armour, skill books, ammo and chems, you name it, it was here. I fill my pockets as best I could, but even with the help of Buffout, I have to leave most of the good stuff behind. I read a few additional holodiscs which provide a ton of lore and insight to past experiments before making my way back to the surface. The Glow is certainly a memorable place and one not forgotten in a hurry. It's designed in a way to encourage the player to explore further, and I really did enjoy uncovering its mysteries. I've now got a one-tracked mind. I'm sensing that I'm not too far away from beating the game, so I make acquiring power armour a priority. Handing over the holodisc from the Glow, I'm granted access to the Brotherhood bunker. As I start doing the rounds, I'm told that Elder Maxon is located on the 4th floor, but I introduce myself first to Paladin Talus in the training hall. He wastes no time in sending me back out on an assignment. An initiate has gone missing, apparently in the hub, and I'm tasked with finding him. I'm promised a decent reward for helping Talus, so I accept and move on to speak with Michael, the Brotherhood Quartermaster. As a new recruit, I'm granted a piece of Brotherhood combat armour, meaning my new recently acquired combat armour from the Glow is already redundant. I'm now over encumbered by a substantial amount and can no longer pick things up, including weightless items such as stimpaks and even bottle caps. However, I can still receive an item, regardless of its weight, if it's handed over by an NPC as a gift or quest reward. Bartering also operates as normal, so I can only assume that this is another bug that never got ironed out. There isn't any other drawback to being overloaded, and I can still run, so I just deal with it until I can offload all my extra stuff at one of the numerous vendors at the hub. I head straight to the 4th level, and speaking with Elder Maxon opens up another quest opportunity, although strangely it doesn't get logged into my Pip-Boy. Maxon is a straight-talking, no-nonsense veteran and the great-grandchild of the original Brotherhood founder. He wants me to scout out the northwest area of the map, as he believes this is where the main base of operations for the super mutants is located. The emergence of the mutants in recent times has the Brotherhood on edge, so much so that they've stopped training new recruits altogether and are instead focusing on elite level training for their knights and paladins, believing this to be the best strategy when preparing for the battles to come. After speaking with Maxon, I head to the 3rd floor to speak with Vree, the head scribe, and although I don't know it yet, Vree is about to become one of the most important characters in the entire game, especially for a non-combat focused player. Not only can she increase a player's science skill, she's also in possession of a holodisk that contains evidence of mutant sterility, which is something the Zax AI told me about back in the Glow, but it's confirmed by Vree after concluding a mutant autopsy. She willingly hands over the disc, which unlocks a potential non-violent way to beat the game later on. Also on the 3rd floor, I stumble across the maintenance department, who just happens to have a dismantled suit of power armour. Apparently it's not up to inspection standards and is a bit of a fixer-upper, but I'm not picky. I have a decent repair skill, but I still need a part from Michael. With no way of gaining legitimate authorization, the only options I have are to either steal one from the cantankerous Paladin Rhombus or try and sweet talk one out of the Quartermaster. I opt for the latter and head back to fix up the suit, only to remember that I'm overloaded and can't pick the armour up. The Brotherhood combat armour isn't too shabby, so will have to do for now. The final floor, and arguably the most important floor I've yet to explore, is level 2. My already impressive special attributes are about to get even better, as the dock offers a number of operations for a price. I have the option of improving each special attribute by 1, with the exception of charisma and luck. I'm sitting on around about 12,000 caps at this point, so I opt to increase agility from 9 to 10 for the additional action point, and also intelligence from 9 to 10 for the additional 2 skill points per level. Each operation takes a considerable amount of time to recover from, 6 weeks in total actually, so it's probably best to get these upgrades after removing the water chip countdown timer, just in case. After my rest and recuperation, it's time to head back to the hub to look for the wayward initiate, who isn't exactly the easiest guy to find. After a bit of trading, I come across a farmer who's been forced out of his home by raiders, so I offer to lend a hand in reclaiming his property. He rewards me with a unique 223 pistol for my trouble. This hand cannon packs a serious punch, and it becomes my weapon of choice until I can bump up energy weapons. I believe it's supposed to be modelled off the Harrison Ford weapon in the Blade Runner movie, and is also known as That Gun in New Vegas, which is yet another link between the two games. My search goes on as I continue to look for my lost lamb, and I wander over to the Maltese Falcon Bar and Casino. It's the base of operation for the local gangsters of the hub, and I believe a crime boss would know the whereabouts of a Brotherhood soldier, and I'm half right. I'm introduced to Decker. He's a sinister character and gets straight to the point. He wants Darren Hightower, the owner of the water merchants, gone, and is willing to pay me to pull the trigger. I can't ask him about the Lost Initiate, and I'm not in the business of murder for coin, so like a good Boy Scout, I head straight to the sheriff and offer my services in taking the crime boss down. The power struggle is similar to what I encountered back in Junktown, and the law has been biding their time, waiting to make a move. The fight, however, is not without risk. Decker's number 2 is easily the most dangerous combatant in the room and hits like a tank, but after he falls, the rest follow suit. The police pay me a total of 1,300 caps for lending a hand, meaning I'm already back up to 6,000 caps and can now easily afford another implant. With Decker taken care of, I find myself running around like a headless chicken, methodically checking every building as I look for clues, but I'm unable to find anything tangible. I've resisted the temptation to search the wiki for answers up to now, but I am starting to run out of ideas. I even discover a group known as the Thieves Circle in my search, and I take on more work. Ironically, they want me to steal from Darren Hightower, which I am more agreeable to do. The Master Thief is supposed to be the Fallout equivalent of Robin Hood, so yeah, I take the job. As I head across town to carry out the heist, I swing by and talk with my old friend Harold, who shares a rumour about Decker holding a member of the Brotherhood hostage in Old Town. Well, now I'm getting somewhere. I enter the last building left to check and boom! I'm ambushed by Decker's thugs. I don't know if they were always there or whether talking to Harold was the quest trigger, but the goons are swept aside and I finally find the Lost Initiate. Job done. All that's left for me to do now is to pinch the necklace from the lockbox inside the Hightower estate, turn it over to Loxley, offload some more loot for caps and head back to the Lost Hills bunker. It takes a few days to hike back and the word has already reached Talus of my success. He lets me choose my reward. I can either have a rocket launcher, a laser pistol, super sledge or power armor, so obviously I go for the laser pistol. Just kidding, I can't select power armor quick enough and I head straight over to Michael to collect my prize. Equipping the armor feels like a Power of Grayskull moment. I have an impressive arsenal of weapons and I look like the Iron Giant. I feel unstoppable. Finally getting the power armor genuinely feels like a huge milestone. My strength jumps to 8 and all of the various damage threshold and resistances skyrocket, meaning the vast majority of enemies stand no chance as they can barely cause enough damage to scratch the paint job. I've cobbled together enough cash to get the remaining implants, increasing strength further to 9, perception is also increased to 9 and endurance to 6. My character sheet is looking mightily impressive and I feel ready for the approaching endgame. There are still 2 locations blocked out on my Pip-Boy interface, and now it's pretty obvious that the places still to be discovered are the mutant strongholds. The only other known place of interest I've yet to visit are the ruins of Los Angeles, or Aditum to the locals. The place is run by John Zimmerman, which is the one and only time I am going to attempt to pronounce his surname. From now on, he shall be known as Big John. Big John also runs Aditum with a group of mercenaries known as the Regulators. Now, unlike the hub law enforcement, the Regulators are a lot more dictatorial in their approach to law and order. They also control all of the wealth, which has created a lot of dependency and unrest within the Boneyard. The leader, a guy named Caleb, points me in the direction of Big John, who offers me a job opportunity. A rival organisation known as the Blades have been terrorising the townsfolk and are accused of murdering the mayor's son. He wants their leader dead and offers caps in return. Now, I'm not 100% certain I'm getting the full picture here, so I put the job on the back burner for now and I start to ask around town for some more job opportunities until I can get a clearer picture of the current situation involving the 2 main factions. During my numerous conversations, I find out that there is another vault close by and a cathedral location is now added to the Pip-Boy as a point of interest. I'm fairly confident this is where I'll find this super mutant master, but for now I concentrate on helping the people around the town as best I can. At the southern end of town is a scientist that needs help fixing up some equipment for his hydroponic farm, and he sends me to see a scavenger who knows where I can find the parts needed. This scavenger hunt has me sneaking into a part of town that has become home to numerous Deathclaws. Usually I would hold off on such a quest, but I've now reached that point in the game where I start to welcome the fight rather than try to avoid it, so I no longer feel intimidated by what the game is trying to throw at me. Whilst en route to the Deathclaw playground, I pass by the Blades' hideout and speak with their leader. It's apparent straight away that they are not the violent gang of marauders that the mayor has made them out to be. Instead, they are some of the worst off members of society, living in squalor as outcasts. Their leader is a woman known as Eraser, and she is nervous when I mention the mayor's name. I sense something amiss, and her demeanour soon shifts from nervous to furious when I tell her about the accusations against her and her group. It turns out that she was in a relationship with the mayor's son, and it's in fact the regulators that are responsible for his demise. She tells me he was caught trying to sneak back into town to warn his dad of the shady goings-ons behind his back, and he paid the ultimate price. She provides me proof by handing over a holodisk of an intercepted regulator transmission. The transmission is pretty messed up and provides enough evidence to incriminate Caleb and his regulators in the young fella's murder. I offer to tell Big John the truth, but Razor isn't convinced it'll be enough to remove the regulators from their position, so she offers an alternative solution of a surprise attack instead. The problem is, they've got no weapons. Razor suggests speaking with the Gun Runners to see if they can offer any assistance. Now, the Gun Runners are a neutral faction that live in a compound on the other side of town. It's a badass fortress that has a toxic waste moat for added protection, but it is cut off from the rest of Addington due to the Deathclaw menace. Speaking with the Gun Runners, it materialises that they actually want to leave the city for good, but the Deathclaws are blocking their route. So, thinking I can kill two birds with one stone, I agree to take on the Deathclaw problem, and in exchange, they'll supply the Blades with the weapons and armour they need. Now, I fight a grand total of 2 lizards, and head back to report my success, but I am told to wait a couple of days to make sure that the Deathclaws are truly gone. The Gunrunners aren't exactly convinced, as they claim to have already taken out 20 of the beasts over the last 2 years, but for some reason they keep coming back. In the meantime, I return the machine parts to Miles, who asks me to deliver them to his business partner, Smitty, for repair. Doing this nets me a pile of caps and stimpaks, but the real reward is an opportunity to improve my power armour and plasma rifle. Smitty happily upgrades my weapon, but I need to return to the hub to collect some technical documents for the armour improvements. Before leaving, I have one last area to look around, and I discover yet another familiar faction, the Followers of the Apocalypse. It's here where I pick up another companion, although she is easily the weakest one I've come across so far. She can use a gun, but her specialty is throwing knives, which are as much use as tits on a fish, so I don't expect she'll survive very long, but I take her along for the journey all the same. I load Katya up with an SMG plus loads of ammo just to give her a fighting chance. Now, the Followers are ran by another woman and talking head called Nicole, and she has some useful information to share regarding the Children of the Cathedral and their alliance with the super mutant Nightkin. She also tells me to seek out one of her undercover spies within the cathedral should I ever find myself out that way, but that's about it. This version of the Followers is largely forgettable when compared to the same organisation that branched off to establish a base of operations in Freeside under Julie Farkas. Nicole offers no quests, only information. The fact that she's a talking head suggests that there were plans in development to flesh out the Followers more, but it was likely cut due to time restraints. All that being said, there is one character of note however, a ghoul named Talius. He can be located within the Followers library and apparently was a former resident of Vault 13, but my character no longer appears to recognise him after he was captured by mutants and dipped in the FEV. Talius gives me a quest to uncover a spy from the cathedral that has infiltrated the Followers, but I never got round to finishing it off, and I've since learned that the quest was actually cut content and never fully implemented into the final build of the game, so I couldn't have finished it even if I wanted to. Fast forward a few days and I've returned from the hub 750 caps lighter, and I deliver the tech manuals over to Miles, who gets to work straight away. He's able to improve the armour significantly, giving both damage threshold and resistance bonuses across the board. All I've got to do now is check back in with the Gunrunners, and sure enough, the Deathclaws have respawned just as they predicted. I investigate the warehouse area in greater detail, and after a while I find a staircase in the centre of the map leading to a basement that is home to a Deathclaw mother. She's tougher and more perceptive than the rest and has an additional 100 hit points, so she takes a bit longer to kill. I also take care of all the unhatched eggs just in case, cementing my place as the boogeyman within the Deathclaw folklore. The gunrunners honour their end of the bargain and agree to provide the blades with all the equipment they need before they leave for Aditum for good, which is probably for the best, because shortly after leaving, the entire town descends into mayhem. Razor's plan is put into action and the blades mount their attack on the regulators as planned and sweep through the town like a hurricane. This inspires the locals to rise up and fight alongside them, but they aren't as well equipped and some of them are killed in the chaos. Now, a point to note here, Miles and Smitty also get involved, so it's wise to upgrade your gear with them first before the battle is triggered, just on the off chance they do get taken out. The fighting goes on for a long time as every NPC on the map gets to take a turn. Big John is sadly shot by his so-called bodyguard, meaning that he dies without ever knowing the truth about his son. It's actually a really tragic end to a character that was truly none the wiser to the goings-ons behind his back. In the aftermath, I speak to Razor, which awards 2000 XP, and she tells me to speak with Miles and Smitty if I hadn't already done so. I'd like to say that Aditum is now in a better state compared to how it was when I arrived, but looking at the piles of bodies that now line the streets, I'm not so sure. If there was a peaceful resolution to this quest, I would have opted for that route, but even offering Big John the regulator holodisc results in conflict. I feel like the good guys definitely won, but it does leave a slightly bitter taste in the mouth. I suppose war really never changes. With everything now ticked off in the quest log, it's time to travel to the cathedral and finally confront the super mutant master. I arrive at the cathedral doorstep and I am immediately joined by a group of followers that seem up for a fight. I don't recall asking for help, but now they're here, I'm hoping that they'll make my job easier. I can't interact with them in any way, so that rules out using them for a potential diversion should I need to sneak around the place. A full-on assault is the only choice on offer here. Entering the main hall is easy enough and so far there's been no need for any hostile action. Locating the follower's spy helps me bypass a locked door which grants access to the living areas. Now these are out of bounds, but in order to progress further I'm told by Laura, the follower's spy, that I need to acquire a special key from the cult leader. So I have no choice but to enter the restricted area, and this is where things get a little bit frustrating. Now the living quarters, in my humble opinion, are just poorly designed. There are 3 separate floors that are tight and extremely cramped, making combat awkward and actually unenjoyable. It's not always clear who you're aiming at due to the isometric view, so I had to redo this entire section multiple times because of a wayward shot towards a companion. What I've come to realise over the course of my playthrough is that AI combat logic isn't always logical. Now if you attack a companion by accident, they still assume you've done it on purpose, resulting in them focusing their attacks at you instead of the enemies, and in this case the enemy are Nightkin. It doesn't help matters either when the same avatar is used in VATS for humans and super mutants alike. I really just wanted to dismiss the temporary followers, but as I've just mentioned, they won't talk to me, they just follow like lost sheep, and most of them clearly knew Ian prior to all of this, because they like to copy his trick of standing in the doorway. On top of all this, the Nightkin are bloody tough and have firepower equal to mine. They're also using stealth boys, making this entire level the trickiest to get past so far. The silver lining to the increased difficulty is that all the followers are picked off quite easily by the mutant guards, so it's not long before it's just me and Capture once again. Now eventually I do make it to the top floor after numerous attempts and take down the cult leader to retrieve the key needed from his inventory. I've started to notice a number of important NPCs wearing purple robes. So I start to wonder if this could have been used as a disguise in conjunction with my own stealth boy to skip all of this nonsense, but I'm too far into this now to care. It's gung-ho and guns blazing from here on in. Heading into the inner sanctum, I pick up a Gatling laser from a 19th Century's corpse, which improves my mood immensely. I test it out on another familiar enemy in the form of a centaur as well as other abominations, and I'm impressed with the results. I do, however, need to be conservative with it for now because it rinses through microfusion ammo and I need that ammo type for the turbo plasma rifle. As an added bonus, I've now just hit level 12 and decide to take energy weapons as a 4th tag skill. So not only does this give me a 20-point bonus, but it works retroactively, meaning every point spent into the skill so far is doubled. This shoots energy weapons up to a massive 150 points, so needless to say, I'm a very happy bunny right now. Underneath the cathedral is the old vault where most of the older residents of the boneyard originated from. The new tenants, however, haven't been keeping on top of housekeeping. The walls are covered in organic matter that one assumes once belonged to humans brainwashed by the Unity's ideology and have now become one with the Master. With no FEV vats present, it's my best guess that the humans inside the vault are being kept like cattle and are being used as a potential food source to provide sustenance to the Master as he continues to grow within the walls of the vault. Now, they definitely didn't include that in the pamphlet back in the hub. I'm now getting attacked from all angles and Katja, as expected, gets taken out, but let's be honest, she was never surviving this encounter. I'm racking up a lot of XP right now and this place is swarming with mutants and human crazes. I pick up something called a psychic nullifier. I had no idea at the time what it was for, but I have since found out that it helped repel the Master's psychic attack, making the forthcoming boss fight slightly easier. With the mutants cleared, only the Master remains. He's something straight out of a horror movie. He has multiple voice modules from other recognisable NPCs within the game and has tendrils interwoven with all the nooks and crannies of the vault. His head and brain is fused with the Overseer's chair and honestly his design is both awesome and disturbing. H.R. Geiger would be proud. I'm now approaching the home straight and presented with 4 options to secure victory. The first I stumbled upon by accident. There's actually a 4th level to this vault which makes it unique to the rest that have featured so far. Using the elevator I'm taken to an area that is housing a nuclear warhead. What, where, why? Honestly, I have not got a clue, but with a high enough lockpick and science skill you can gain access to it and set it off. This essentially means you can kill the main antagonist of the game without ever interacting with him, and I actually really like that as a potential outcome, so fair play to the mind behind that one. Option number 2 is to simply join the Unity and become a super mutant. Now doing this will result in the bad ending, which is an identical cutscene to the one triggered should you submit to the Lieutenant. Accepting the Master's offer and then having this ending just felt a bit dissonant. I might be nitpicking here, but it would have made more sense and also been a lot cooler if the Vault Dweller willingly entered the FEV in a separate cutscene rather than being dangled like a worm on a hook. Having a slightly altered scene here would have better reflected the player's choice to join the Master instead of it appearing like we're still being forced. The third option requires a decent amount of speech and Vree's holodisc from the Brotherhood of Steel. By choosing the correct dialogue options, you can convince this monstrosity that his plan for Unity was doomed from the start due to the super mutant infertility. After checking in with a female mutant, the Master has a sudden sense of realisation. I'm guessing he must have just recently grown a new appendage with a conscience because he sees the errors of his ways and decides to self-terminate by triggering the nuke on the 4th level. I understand that there is a need for this option to exist, especially for a pacifist run, but in my opinion, this is probably the weakest of all potential outcomes. It's difficult for me personally to believe that the main villain would just give up after this revelation, instead of adopting a more pragmatic approach to the problem, for example. The failure of Unity is just simply accepted, flushing decades of work away in mere seconds. Now finally, the fourth and my preferred option is to kill it with fire, or in my case, plasma. Now the Master has a huge 500 hit points, wields dual Gatling lasers, and has enough action points to attack twice in a combat round. Fighting him isn't easy, and on top of all of that, super mutants spawn in the corridor behind, which caught me off guard on more than one occasion. I had to take a number of chems such as Psycho and Mentats to get through the fight, and after a few tries I finally put an end to this psychotic plan. Regardless of what option you choose, with the exception of joining Unity, the end result was always the same. The self-destruct is activated and I've now got 4 minutes to escape. The way back is relatively straightforward and there's no further resistance as I make my way back to the ground level. Once I'm successfully outside, I leave via the exit zone and watch the resulting fireworks. 1 down, 1 to go. The Master is gone, but my quest isn't over yet. The final objective of destroying the FEV VATs still remains, so I head northwest for the final showdown at the Mariposa base, and it's all action from start to finish. There's no need for tack here. Diplomacy is not an option, to quote Liberty Prime. After taking care of the sentries outside, I start to move methodically through the base, using the repair skill as I disable the force fields, clearing each floor of mutants as I go. During this massacre, I hit level 15, but any extra perks are irrelevant at this point. The Lieutenant is waiting for me on the 4th floor, which is also where the VATs are located. I've mentioned throughout this review of my disappointment with some oversights within the writing when resolving certain conflicts, and this confrontation with the Master's second in command is another example of that. As soon as I come into view, he says a few words and attacks. There's no mention of the Master's death or the destruction of his vault. It's odd that I can't gloat or demoralise him with the revelation that Unity, along with everything the mutants have been working towards, has failed. I want to tell him to stand down and go and live out his days in peace, but I simply can't. Ironically, unlike the confrontation with the Master, a speech check in this scenario would have made much more sense. Now, bearing in mind this moment is technically the first time my character has had any interaction with the Lieutenant. All the interesting dialogue from my first encounter on a separate save file is no longer available to scroll through, which means many players could go through the entire game without knowing he exists until this moment. It seems a strange decision to make the Lieutenant one of the final boss fights and not allow for some in-depth conversation like we could with the Master. By not allowing to talk in depth with him at this point has in essence relegated him to being a generic mutant soldier who is easily forgotten, and that is a tragedy because he is easily the best voice acted character in the entire game. In any case, the fight isn't as tough as the one versus the Master previously, but it isn't a cakewalk either. He has 250 hit points and is flanked by 2 bodyguards armed with heavy weapons, as well as a robed member of the Children of the Cathedral. Just like the Master, he is armed with a Gatling laser and has a unique death animation which is different. He also has a holodisc, but I'm not sure what it contained. I didn't get any XP reward for reading it, suggesting I already have that information logged in the Pip-Boy. Looting the lockers close by, I find a strange key that can be used to set off the nuke back at the Master's base, meaning I could have done either of the endgame missions in any order, which is good to know for a future playthrough. After the final battle, all that's left to do is set the base to self-destruct and get the hell out of there. Hacking the VAT control terminal gives some additional lore about the origins of the Brotherhood, which is cool, and there's also a diary written by Richard Gray detailing the events before, during and after his transformation, which I enjoyed reading. As before, I have a limited amount of time to get out of the base, and as I cross the exit zone, another cutscene plays as the FEV VATs are destroyed. Job done, game over. With everything now finished, I'm treated to a summary of my actions via a series of ending slides that are narrated over once more by Ron Perlman. I get mostly good endings, although the final outcomes for the followers and the hub are negative due to another bug in the final build of the game that was never patched out. Apparently there is a mod out there called Fallout Fix-It that corrects many of the bugs present in the vanilla version. So I think when I decide to play again, I'll look to install that mod first for a more accurate outcome based off my decisions. Once the slides are complete, I'm instantly teleported back to the entrance of Vault 13, the place where this adventure began, and the ending is bitter sweet. In fact, it's so memorable it was reused in Fallout 3.
Done it. That's wonderful, amazing. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished, what you've endured. There's no way the people of the Vault can ever thank you enough for what you've done. You've saved all our lives. Who knows, maybe even saved the human race. Yes. That makes the rest of this even harder. Everyone will want to talk to you. Every youngster will look up to you and want to emulate you. And then what? They'll want to leave. What happens to the Vault if we lose the best of a generation? What if we are the only safe place in the world? You just gave us back all these lives. I can't take the chance of losing them. I've made a lot of tough decisions since I took this position, but none of them harder than this one. You saved us, but you'll kill us. I'm sorry. You're a hero, and you have to leave.
You saved us. But that doesn't change the fact that you killed the Overseer in cold blood to do it, and I can't let that sort of thing stand here. I'm sorry. You're a hero, and you have to leave.
Banished into the desert, the Vault Dweller cuts a forlorn figure and the credits roll, maybe playing once more in the background. Now my total playtime was around 15 hours and I've thoroughly enjoyed myself throughout this experience. It's been great to finally become acquainted with this classic, and I can definitely see another playthrough on the horizon. If you are a fan of the franchise, I encourage you to give the original game a chance. In my opinion, it is well worth your time. The main story is well paced and allows time for the side questing of Vault Dweller. I personally like a game that starts off slow and then starts to turn up the dial steadily as you progress, and the early game exploration of Shady Sands, Vault 15 and Junktown allowed me to find my feet and progress at my own speed. I never felt the game was unfair, and although there were plenty of challenging moments, it's never overly difficult for the sake of it. The gameplay loop was always engaging. I'd actually go as far to say it's perfect, with new gear and level ups coming at just the right time. The lore, gameplay, voice acted characters and progression systems all come together to form a solid RPG, albeit with a couple of issues with parts of the writing that I've already mentioned during the video. In many areas, classic Fallout puts a lot of modern games to shame, and the S-tier soundtrack is something I can easily listen to on a loop whilst my mind wanders into the ether. It's a real treat for the ears. Seriously, find the playlist on YouTube and give it a listen. There's just something about 90s video game music that just hits differently. Anyway, I've been flapping my gums for long enough. A big thank you to all of those that have made it to the end. I know it's been a long one. All that's left to say is thanks as always for watching. You've been awesome. I've been about average. Toodle pip.